Start game now. Welcome, retro fans, to another edition of No Swear Gamer. Today, AT-AT Commander's joining me because he heard his buddy Han Solo can rock a pretty mean fedora. That's because today we're going to take a look at Raiders of the Lost Ark for the Atari 2600 VCS system. Yep, that's right. It has some absolutely gorgeous box art. I really dig that. The contrasting colors, especially the bright gold colors here at the side. I even like all the different poses of Indiana Jones whipping his whip, even though you will not see such animation on a 2600. The back is rocking a single screenshot and just a little blurb about it. And it tells you that this uses two joystick controllers, even though it's a single player game. And yep, this one is rocking some hair. I have no idea. Oh, it's falling out. I guess middle age must be hitting this game. So let's go ahead and look at the manual for a second. One thing interesting about the manual, and I love Atari 2600 manuals, I like the stories and the nice illustrations inside, but something interesting. Warning, do not read further if you do not be wished to give clues to solve future parts of the game. There's actually a spoiler alert in this manual, not once, and check out that awesome artwork, not once, but twice. A second warning going all the way to the back with some more hints. So that was very interesting that they had so many spoiler alerts. I don't know if I've ever seen that in an Atari 2600 manual before. But let's go ahead, pop Raiders of the Lost Ark into our Atari 7800 Pro system and find out if this is an adventure worth taking or not. Let's go to the game. Raiders of the Lost Ark came out in 1982, and if my research is correct, it may have came out a month before E.T., which goes to show how quickly E.T. was rushed because both games were made by Howard Scott Warshaw, who holds the distinction of making one of the highest praised games on the system with Yars Revenge and one of the lowest praised games with E.T. He also holds the distinction of being the inspiration for the character Howard Wolowitz on The Big Bang Theory. Get it? Howard Wolowitz, Howard Warshaw. Very similar, right? Well, I totally made that up, but now you'll never watch the show the same again. In this game, your job is to help Indy find the Ark of the Covenant by avoiding enemies, gathering items, and solving puzzles. It is basically a mix of action and a point-and-click game, if you can believe that. Because in this game, not only are you going to have to use your whip to defend yourself, but you're also going to have to gather items and use them just like you would in a point-and-click adventure game. But of course, this one doesn't have a mouse. Instead, it is a single-player game that is using two controllers, a very interesting setup. The first controller, or the left controller, is used to select items in your inventory by either pushing right or left, and then pressing a button will drop the item that you selected. The second controller, or the right controller, is used to control your character himself, and pressing the button on this controller will actually use the item that you have selected. This is the opposite of most games because most games on the Atari 2600 use the left controller as the primary controller, where this one uses the right. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. There is an inventory screen located at the bottom of your screen, and you can hold up to 6 items at a time, which is very important because you're going to need more than 6. So at sometimes you may have to drop them. If you drop them, they will disappear. Now, there are several items to use in the game, including a magic flute that if you use that, it will keep you immune from snakes and flies. There's also coins that you can use to buy stuff, grenades that can blow away some barriers, a key. There's also your trusty whip, which if you push your button will shoot out and look more like a gunshot than a whip when you use it. There's also a parachute, a timepiece, and that is very important because sometimes in this game there are elements that are actually timed. They can only happen at certain times of day. So if you use your timepiece, it acts like a watch. It looks like a clock and you can figure out what time it is. And there's certain things that will appear only at a certain point in time in the day. There's also a revolver that you can get and bullets as well, and you can run out of the bullets. There's also other mysterious items like an ankh, a chai, and an hourglass, and a shovel, as well as some other items that you might find during the game. Once you complete the game, at the end they will show a picture of Indiana Jones and the Ark, kind of like this little ladder that kind of raises up, and the more it raises up, the higher your score. You don't get points per se, but the higher it goes, the better you did in the game. And that can vary even if you find the Ark of the Covenant, exactly how high it goes. goes. Graphically speaking, this game is a mixed bag. On one hand, you could tell who Indiana is, and the Ark looks pretty good, and you also have several different screens. This isn't a single screen game like several Atari 2600 games, but it actually has several different environments for you to explore. But on the other hand, some things are very difficult to tell exactly what they are, and this is especially frustrating when you're dealing with a game that's kind of like a point and click adventure game and it doesn't hold your hand. So you look at something and you're like, what is that? And it kind of looks like a basket, but really it's your coin holder and you use it to buy stuff. And who do you buy it from? Is that guy a bad guy? Just a head? What's going on here? So it can be really confusing when you're going around the game to try and figure out exactly what is what, especially if you don't use the spoilers in the back. But even if you do, you will still have confusion exactly what is going on. Sound and music wise, at the beginning of the game, it does play a nice variation of the Indiana Jones theme in a loop. It's a short loop, but for the Atari 2600, it's pretty impressive. And the rest of the sounds, well, they just do their job. Nothing too impressive there. Family friendly wise, I would say it is a family friendly game. There is no blood and guts. And actually, you won't be able to tell what half the stuff is anyway. So even if there was blood and guts, you probably wouldn't know looking at it because this game can be very confusing at times exactly what you're looking at. But yeah, it is a family friendly game. On eBay, prices of this game for loose copies were fairly cheap, going from $4 to $5 for a shipped loose copy to your door, and complete copies were going somewhere in the $15 range. So overall, what did I think of Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark? Well, it's really hard to grasp for me. On one hand, I really appreciate what Howard Scott Warshaw was doing. This game has probably more depth than any game I've experienced on the Atari 2600, with its inventory system, the time sensitivity where some things can only happen at a certain time, all the different screens and what he was doing. When you stand back and appreciate what he put into it, you can really, really appreciate just all the work that he put into it. It really is an impressive feat from a technical standpoint. It's a massive game on the Atari 2600, a system that is used for simple games. On the other hand, I feel like this game is too big for the system. It just gets too frustrating at times, and it is so confusing where basically I don't know how anyone could figure out this game without a game pack, without some sort of a guide, or without some sort of cheats. It is so confusing at times. I remember one time I was trying to buy the flute, and I kept trying to push my button on my right controller when I had my money selected, but I couldn't buy the flute. Was I staying in right spot or was I not? And then I realized that, oh, I have to drop the money, not use the money to buy the flute by pressing a button on the other controller. And this just kind of set me for a loop for a long time. It was like 20-30 minutes before I re-looked at the manual and saw that, oh, I got to drop the money down. And that only happened by looking at the spoilers. And this is one of the biggest problems with the game. It's not a game that's easy to explore. It can be very confusing, and I could see where several people who bought this game didn't get very far in it because they had no idea what they were doing. For instance, how are you supposed to know what time things are supposed to happen at? It's kind of up in the air. Maybe if you study in the movie, or maybe if you find out from a friend. And also, how are you supposed to know how different items interact with different people? Because there's no hints about it, and there's no hints at all how to use items with different things. You just kind of have to guess. And let's talk about the snakes for a second, which I don't think Indiana Jones likes, and after this game you won't like either, because the snakes appear in certain screens, and one screen they can appear on is in the shop area where you're trying to shop and buy stuff. However, there's a problem. The snakes are brown, and so is the strip in the middle of the shop area. It is also the same exact shade of brown. So when the snakes are on the side, you can see them because the colors contrast, but when they're in the middle where the shades are exactly the same, you can't see them. So you might be just staying trying to buy the flute, and all of a sudden you are dead because something attacked you and it took one of your 3 lives. And that's just another example of one of the frustrations I had with the game. This game is like finding a needle in the haystack, and that's the problem with this game, is that it's very hard to explore it. So what do I think overall? I think it is a masterpiece in the fact of everything that went into the game, but I don't think it executed very well for the player. It's kind of like a piece of art that you admire from a distance, but not too close, or else you see all the flaws in it. So I really appreciate what Howard Scott Warshaw did, but I just didn't have a good time with it. I think the only way I could defeat this game is by using a walkthrough, and then what fun is that? I might as well just go find another video that shows me exactly what it looks like anyways, right? So I'm going to rank this kind of low. Now, looking at the bottom of my list, I will say that I would rather play this than Tax Avoiders and Firefighter and even Space Jockey, but that's about it. So I'm going to put Raiders of the Lost Ark right at my number 10 position. Maybe one day I might have the desire to try and actually get out a guide and actually play through it from beginning to end, but I don't know how likely that is going to be. So it's one of those games that I'm just probably going to pass up, and I probably won't play it ever again, or maybe just once or twice. So Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's a game to appreciate from a distance, but not one I would recommend going out of my way for. Now, if your experience was different as a kid, maybe you have a strong nostalgic tie to this game, maybe you might enjoy it still today, but I don't think newcomers to this game would appreciate it as far as gameplay goes. They might appreciate everything that goes into it, but not the game itself. Alright guys, I want to give a special shout out to the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast. They're a member of the Retro Junkies Network, and so am I, and they're hosted by Ferg McCartney, and you want to check him out. He's going to cover this game. I believe it's going to be episode 84, somewhere around there, and it's going to have a lot of interesting facts about it, as well as some people's experience growing up with it, so that's something you won't want to miss. Don't forget, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and if you like videos like this, even if you don't like the game, please hit the like button and also subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks guys for giving me a little part of your day, and I look forward to seeing you next time right here on the No Swear Gamer. Take care everybody. Have a good one.